I am a killer. I committed a crime and only my parents know. Childhood is the time in life when we forge our personalities, our values with which we will face life, our tastes for certain particular topics that will make us form a group of people with similar tastes and ideas to ours, who will later become our friends. Lastly, but not least, our fears and traumas are forged, which will accompany us for a time in our lives or, as in my case, for the rest of my life until I am no longer in this earthly plane, since anguish and guilt still haunt me at 34 years old. My story is as follows. I am currently a woman who lives with her boyfriend, almost husband, with whom I have been for almost 11 years, and I believe he is the love of my life. We have not formalized the marriage, perhaps due to a lack of interest on both sides, because I feel that I love him and he loves me enough not to have to fix this in a bureaucratic act imposed by modern societies. As a result of our love, and against all odds, I became pregnant. I say against all odds because I took great care not to become a mother and everything would be great, rosy, and idyllic if it weren't for one small detail. I have a great trauma with small babies. My trauma is so great that since I was 4 years old I stopped playing with dolls and anything that looks like a small baby. It causes me anguish and anxiety that makes me cry with panic. All my friends have had children, and I am the last one left. My social circle is happy with the news. My husband is happier than ever in his life. And I feel so guilty for not sharing these feelings. Many might think it's the female hormones wreaking havoc on my body as a pregnant woman, but no. Many of my friends have been upset with me because I didn't visit them after having their babies. They got even more upset when they came to my house, and I didn't want to hold or see their babies. Sometimes, I didn't even open the door of my house, knowing they were standing at the door with their babies. Perhaps some are already judging me and saying that I am a baby phobic, and they are right. Everyone in my circle already knows and thinks the same. But today I want to reveal this family secret and the reason why I have been like this since I was 4 years old. Not many people know this, only my parents and I. No one else, not even my husband with whom I have been in a relationship for years, knows, because I feel that it would open a Pandora's box that would drag many things, and my life would fall apart like a house of cards. All this trauma started with the most beautiful, desired, adored, and loved gift my parents have ever given me. The gift that made me the happiest person, but also destroyed me in such a way that it made me the woman I am now. In my childhood, I never had a fixed home or spent much time in any city. I moved to different countries 3 times. Not because I was rich or had a glamorous life, but because my father's job required constant change. He is a petroleum engineer, and this meant that he was always transferred to different places. My mother and I lived in oil fields in houses where the engineers' families lived. I know many who hear or read this will feel identified because their lives were probably the same. Having clarified that point, being always on the move, I could never have friends my age or children to share with. To my bad luck, many times I was the only child in the place. Or if there were children, they were babies with whom I couldn't play. I was always alone, with no one but my mom, who took care of the house and taught me the basics of school, so I was always at home with her animals. A dog, a cat, someone to play with and distract myself. No, they were not allowed in these places, and many of these houses were trailers or motorhomes where we lived, so space was limited. So, tell us, what was the gift they gave you, or what happened? My gift was asking my parents for a sibling. A sibling would be the ideal gift because I would finally have a friend and playmate. All my problems at that moment would be solved, and it would be him or her and me against the world. I told them. They laughed, and they said they would think about it because they would have to order it from the store. Besides bringing it, I would have to wait 9 months to see it and hold it in my hands. They asked if I was willing to wait. I nodded and said yes, that I wanted it very much, and that after that, I wouldn't need any more gifts. That was all my soul and brain desired at that moment. Months passed, and my mom got pregnant. I watched her belly grow every day. I would wake up and run to my parents' room every morning just to see if the baby was coming and how my mom's belly was. I always asked how much longer it would take. My parents gave me a giant calendar where I marked off the days one by one, waiting for that big day. Writing these words, I cry, remembering this and feeling how that new life moves inside me. In the last few months, my mother began to deteriorate and suffer from heart problems. All the alarms went off because she and the baby were at risk. Her pregnancy became high risk, where, if something happened, a decision would have to be made for the life of one of them. Seeing this, my father stopped working and took a vacation to be with my mother and me 100% of his time, because his family was at risk. I admire him for this because he was important in his job, and doing this made him lose the job position he had worked so hard to obtain. That years of effort went away just to dedicate the time his family needed at that moment. I know my father will not see this, but I want to say, thank you very much, Dad, for so much love and for being a wise man who knew what was most important. "It's a girl," was the first thing I knew when I accompanied my mother to one of her consultations. Inside, I only felt thousands of fireworks exploding within my excitement. I would have a little sister with whom I could share everything. Our era was getting closer every day. Only 2 weeks left, and I would be with her. 4.2 kga macrosomic baby, a complicated word for my almost 4-year-old self that I learned because they said my sister was that she was so big that they gave her that name. I thought it wasn't a pretty name for a girl, but I understood it was because of her size. A size that caused my mom to have bleeding and risks. I just wanted to see that girl already. Being so big, I thought she would be my size and ready to play. When she was born and I saw her, I felt real love for the first time. I was in love with my sister. Finally, she was here. A blonde and pink girl with a few fine hairs like a thread. My mom had a cesarean section, because she was too big to give birth, and the heart risk would increase. So they decided on a cesarean section and to sterilize her at once, so she wouldn't have more children because the risk was high. Every morning I ran to my parents' room to see my sister. This time, it wasn't my mom's belly, but my sister in person. Being such a big baby, she had a large crib where she slept alone. I wanted to sleep and be with her always, but my parents didn't let me get in with her without supervision. One day, while my parents were busy, and my sister was sleeping in the room, already 5 months old, with a considerable size and weight, I wanted to get into the crib with her, but it would be boring. So I just did what I thought was best at the moment. Take her out of the crib. But since it had bars and was higher than me, I used a small plastic chair. I had to get up and have a better way to move her towards me, little by little. I brought her closer to the bars and took her with my 2 hands. She weighed a lot for me. Trying to lift her, I couldn't, so I climbed with my belly to the bars, staying a bit balanced with my feet barely touching the chair. I took my sister and threw all my weight back until I felt what was the chair at my feet. My plan worked. My sister was already above the bars, or so I thought. I just needed to finish letting go and drop onto the chair I already felt with my feet. I freed myself and let her fall with me, but the plan that I thought was perfect and well executed had 2 big mistakes. 1, I didn't have the strength to hold my sister and her weight. 2, what I felt at my feet was not the base of the chair, but the backrest of it. This caused both of us to fall hard and roughly on the floor, where we both received blows from the fall. The house shook from the impact and subsequently my sister's cry, which alerted my mother, who stormed into the room, finding both of us on the floor. My sister's cry was loud but sharp, but it lasted only a few seconds, as my mother took her in her arms. I will never forget my mother's anguished face. She asked me what happened, and I told her that I tried to take her out to play with her, but my mother didn't look at my face. All her attention was on my sister, who was already calm. My father hadn't noticed anything yet because he was outside washing his car. My mom told me to tell my dad to prepare the car, that we had to go urgently to the hospital to check on my sister. She told me to go running while she got everything ready to leave immediately. I started crying while running and just screamed, "Dad! Dad!" My dad activated his senses and said, "What happened? Turn on the car. My sister got hurt, and she's coming with my mom." My dad prepared the car for us to leave just as my mom was coming out the door and told him to drive to the hospital because she thought the baby wasn't well. We left at full speed while they bombarded me with questions about why I did it, that I always had to tell them and be with an adult to handle my sister. I could only say I was sorry and ask for my sister's forgiveness. We arrived at the village hospital where we were, as at that time, my dad was back working in the oil fields. If we wanted to go to the city hospital, we had to drive at least 3 hours. Upon arriving at the hospital, being the only nearby health center, it was full of people and understaffed. The pediatrician who was supposed to attend to my sister had already left because he didn't work until Monday. We had to wait a few minutes until the on-call rural doctors could see my sister. The diagnosis was that everything was fine and there were no signs of damage. They just prescribed ibuprofen and drops or syrup and sent us home. Everything went well during those days. My mom only noticed that she wasn't eating like before, but everything seemed fine. Until day 8 after the fall, and my sister lay motionless in her crib. She had died from internal damage that wasn't properly detected at the village hospital. Not being a pediatric specialist, they might not have seen the signs. But the truth is that my sister was dead, and the one to blame for all this was none other than me. Only me, and no one else but me, because of my great idea to take her out of the crib. That's how, due to my mistake, I ended the life of what I loved the most. My perfect gift, the compliment of my soul. I almost killed my mom because of my whim. And my dad didn't get the job he wanted so much and had worked for many years to obtain. I completely destroyed my family, or at least that's how I felt, or feel. My parents never said anything bad to me or blamed me for this. In fact, it never came out that it was my fault that my sister died. It's as if she never existed, and they omit the whole topic, perhaps to protect themselves and me emotionally. My family never knew the truth, and many think she died of a heart issue, because she was such a fat and big baby for her age. But the reality is known now by my parents, me, and you who are hearing this. And the truth is, I don't know if I should tell my husband. I've never gone to a psychologist to deal with this, because I currently live in a country where mental health is expensive. Going to a psychologist would cost us a lot of money that we are not in a position to spend since I have the mortgage, the car, and now our daughter on the way. So, I ask you, please, to tell me what you think about this and what advice you can give me about my future motherhood and this feeling of guilt that corrodes me inside. Words of support help a lot. Thank you for taking your time and getting this far.